All right. Jamie, we're going to give it just a minute here, but I want to thank you for coming and joining us. She's going to give us a look at Nectar and what it can do in practice. She's the head of customer success at Nectar. You're going to get to see a demo of Nectar and a sense of how this tool supports learning and engagement. And it's a great chance to see AI in action. And as a user, LAPU uses Nectar, and they are clearly co-hosting with us this conference. And we just want to thank them for being here. Jamie, thank you for being here. We're looking forward to the presentation and seeing what you have for us. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. All right. Can you just give me a thumbs up that you're seeing my presentation? I just want to make sure.
It is there. You're good to go.
All right, great. Well, good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning. My name is Jaime Moquin. I'm the head of customer success at Nectar. And what that means is I get the honor and the privilege every day to get to work with all of our partners and schools and institutions across the US. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to show you the Nectar AI platform, what it can be, what you can use it for, how it complements what you're already doing as just one additional way to be able to reach a variety of students. And 90% of college students are using AI, and Nectar is really about how can we provide a tool for the faculty and staff who know best on what the students should be learning, how they should be learning, being able to take some control of that so it is useful in the right ways for students, and most importantly, for the students to be successful in their courses and in their, seeking their credentials, whether that's a degree or a new credential or just taking some courses one by one. All right, a little bit about Nectar, because it might be new for a lot of you. So Nectar is an AI infrastructure that was purposely built for schools. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So back in 2018, our two co-founders, Jordan Long and Kavita Guy, were both students at UC Santa Barbara. Kavita is giving the keynote closing today. So if you have the opportunity to go to that, I'd highly encourage you. She's just extremely motivational and passionate about education. But Kavita was sitting in class, and as someone who is autistic and ADHD, as she describes, her brain never felt right in the classroom. And she just kind of had this aha moment of how can we better address and use technology in the right way to provide those learning opportunities for students outside of the classroom. And that's what started Nectar. And I think it's important to share with you those roots. I've been in the education space for almost 30 years now, and Nectar is not an organization that is trying to slam its way into education. When I show you Nectar today, you can see that we were built within the education realm. We were built with student feedback. We were built with faculty feedback, and we really continue to do that. And we've been grounded in research from the very beginning, which I think are core fundamental things that matter in education as a former educator myself. When we think about Nectar, we think about an infrastructure that was built for schools. And what I mean by that is the ability for you and your institution, in your classroom or your team that you're with, to be able to really create assistants that are yours. And I'm going to show you the back end as well as what a student would experience. But think about it in a way of just like the ability to deliver your unique course content, grounded in your pedagogy, the way that you want to instruct and teach your courses and support your students. All of those wonderful things like FERPA compliant, extremely secure, which really matters in this space when we're talking about students and your intellectual property. And then, the logistical things easily integrates with LMSs, which makes it really easy to scale. But most importantly, it makes it a really, really great student experience. And then proven by peer-reviewed research. So a few different things in that realm. our folks at LAPU who've been using Nectar for a while have actually seen improvements in GPAs. We've seen across others, a 36% boost in student just motivation to learn. And we also have one of the largest partnerships working with the entire California community college system, who's also been doing research from the beginning and is close to releasing some of that, but they're seeing very positive signs about students' persistence, students finishing that class. And we all know, so many students are working adults or working full time or have families or all sorts of things while they're trying to further their education. And just that persistence from one class to the next continues to lead to their success. So during my presentation today, feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat. I'm more than happy to address those as we go along. And with that, I'm just going to hop over really quick, and we're just going to dive right into the Nectar platform. Nectar is a tool that can be used at colleges and universities, different learning organizations, as well as we are working with several high schools across the country as well. So definitely in those older grades. I'm going to show you some examples today, but I encourage you to think about, everyone always asks me, like, can it do this? Can it do that? And I encourage you to be like, if I could provide a better or more enhanced learning experience for my students, where would I need the most help? How can I create like sort of an extension of myself, or on your campus or your institution? How, is there, one institution was thinking about, we have a lot of students who just need to know where resources are. Where are the resources? Is that the greatest need across your campus? Because Nectar can do a lot of things, and it's really more based about what are you trying to provide for your students, whether that's across the entire campus or within a particular course. So just keep that in mind, that I'm showing you some examples today, but it's kind of limitless on what you could actually do with that, whether that is with the faculty using it as an extension of their classroom or across an entire campus. All right, so what we're seeing here is just my CS university. One of the largest use cases of Nectar is that course assistant. So it is that professor creating that assistant to be able to work with students 24 hours a day when the students are not in the classroom. Most students are not doing coursework between the normal sort of school hours. It's late in the evenings, and often, your academic support centers and things like that are closed, and students are needing traditional help. So I'm going to show you a few interactions from the student perspective, just so you know what that looks like. And then we'll hop to the back end, and I'm going to show you the ability of how easy it is and a lot of the choices that you have as faculty and staff that I know are important to you when it comes to be able to create different tools. So let's all pretend we're in a biology class this morning. We're taking a biology class that is for non-biology majors. And a student can do certain things like, ask the assistant, what are the assignments? Hope we don't have a lot of English faculty on. As with anything else, you don't need to capitalize and write incomplete sentences and all of those sorts of things, unfortunately. But you can go ahead and see here that this assistant happens to have access to the syllabus. So it's quickly providing, the student, go ahead, everything's due at Sunday at 11:59 p.m. This is sort of what we're studying each semester. So just really being able to quickly access that. Let's say we just reviewed cells in class, and I'm struggling with that concept a little bit. So I could just say, review cells with me. I could ask it questions like that. So it's going to start talking about cells, and as you can see here, it gave me a little bit of a definition, a starting idea of what a cell is, but it wants to assess where I'm at. It's going to ask me a few questions to know, what do I know? Where should we dive in? Where is it that I need a little help with? And I, just can have that conversation back and forth, or let's say I can't remember. The other important piece here is that students can type in lots of different languages to their assistants. So for a lot of students, for a lot of our students, they're constantly going back and forth between English and their native language. And so think about just that every time they're studying, if they're working with one of your assistants, if I began typing in Spanish, it will reply back to Spanish. If I was typing in Arabic, it'll reply back to Arabic to me. And there's nothing that's needed on the faculty end to do that. So you're really just helping provide that additional learning opportunity for the students. So I'm just going to go back. So you can see here, it will help me be able to guide me back and forth. It's using a little bit of that question answering, Socratic method, not giving me the answer. It can do things like a built-in quiz functionality. So for a lot of classes, let's say where you have to study a lot of anatomy, I've learned that art history has a lot of vocabulary. I could do something like quiz me on cells, and it has a built-in quiz functionality that would create a quiz for me based on the information that it has. So let's just take this quick cell quiz. You as a owner of an assistant can tell the assistant to create a true and false multiple choice, fill in the blank. You could give it some parameters on that, but you can see here, it tells me how I did, gives me an explanation, and then gives me some feedback, and then it's trying to pull out some areas that I was struggling with some core concepts already. So already suggesting to me what I could continue to study a little bit and practice. So this is a popular one for students because it's allowing them to interact with it a little bit. I've also seen it heavily used in ESL courses, help me practice past tense of verbs or different languages. So can be widely used. The other area to think about using assessments are, if we're thinking about it solely in the academic setting, is for assignments. So there may be times where you're like, I want the students to use my assistant in particular for an assignment. So for example, there's a English faculty member I've gotten to know quite well, and she teaches an introduction, like writing course, and she has shared with us that students really struggle with writing an introduction. So she's created an assistant fully based off of the way that she teaches introductions, and how to write a good introduction. And she has the students go to her assistant. They just kind of click like get started, and it's working back and forth, just like if she was there sitting with them to write an introduction together. And then the students actually turn that in for an assignment. So she's able to, on the back end, put into the assistant exactly the way that she wants it to teach, as an to teach an introduction. And that's one of the assignments that she does. So if we take a look at this example I have here, so I think all of us as educators have been asked that question. Why does this matter? How am I ever going to use this in the field of study? I know when I was teaching fourth grade once, I had a young gentleman come up to me and he was like, Miss Charbonneau, that was my name at the time. Miss Charbonneau, I am never going to use math. I am just going to grow up and take over my dad's farm. And I said, oh, okay. And so then I said to Nick, I can still remember like it was yesterday. And I said, Nick, do you think your dad just gets in the tractor and he just willy-nilly like drives all around the field and drops seed? And they planted hundreds of acres of sunflowers. They bagged their own seed. I said, I think your dad's using math all the time. He knows how much seed he has, how much it costs, where he's planting it, how much he's going to get per bag. And I said, you have a big dairy farm. I said, your dad knows exactly what's going to be that output. I'm like, I'm pretty sure if you want your farm to be successful, you're going to have to know math. And from that day on, he was in. I remember his mom calling me, asking me, what did you say to him? Because he's actually doing his math homework. And I said, I told him that if he doesn't doesn't understand math, he's never going to be successful basically on his dad's farm. And so I think about that even with college students, right? If they're taking a class of yours and you're wanting to help connect them to what they're going to do in the future. And so, we have this idea about this connections exploration. So this particular assistant is for students to think about like how biology would apply in my future major or career. And if I'm teaching biology, there's no way I can know every potential career or field or something students would go into. So one of the things in this particular assignment is that through this conversation with my Connections Explorer, they're going to identify like specific connections between biology and their field. And then at the end, the student actually has a reflection that they need to write about. So for something like this, students would just come in and just kind of start like, okay, start my biology exploration, and it's going to guide them through, because on the back end, I've told it exactly what I want it to do to be able to guide the students back and forth. So, you can think about assignments that you have. Maybe it's a coding activity. Maybe it's something like this. Maybe it's the introduction, a whole variety of different things. If that is, a need and a desire for your students. All the assistants can do things like students can upload their essays to get feedback, maybe based on your rubric that you put in there, and it would provide them that, so they can upload that PDF, they can upload an image, they can upload a whole variety of different files. I recently worked with a accounting professor who has the students handwrite a ledger, and students would handwrite their ledger. They would snap a picture of it, and they would get some initial feedback based on her rubric, and it was able to read their handwriting and the format and give them some initial feedback. So a whole lot of different things that you can do there. Lastly, we think about assistants as, okay, that's a really specific use case, right? It's a course assistant 24/7, an extension of yourself when you're not in the classroom or particular assignments. But you can also provide assistance across your entire campus, for example. So, students trying to begin that initial stage of like, what's next, right? We're in education because there's outcomes. We want students to be successful in their careers, in their field, to society, all of those pieces. And so, for example, we have one of these prompts in there about our career compass. So this is helping students begin to explore, what careers fit in my major. I think any of you have been in this space a long time. You hear things like, I want to help people. Okay, great. So, do you like working with adults? Do you like this? Do you like that? Or I like science. Great, but I don't like to talk to people. Okay, well, then we're probably not going to think about a career as a naturalist. It might be more, behind the scenes or as a researcher or things like that. So you can create assistants that could be used like this, a career compass where it could guide students. This one particularly is using ONET data, all the career profiler information that is out there. And, students, for example, could go ahead and take a quick assessment that would take them about 5 minutes. That's going to give them a lot of the, do you like this or would you rather do this? And then at the end of this, it's going to give them some of their strengths and weaknesses, and then help, or not strengths and weaknesses, more what their interests are based off of sort of the original sort of Holland's Code career clusters, and just help them dive in to career planning and different things like that. And so by no means is this ever to take the place of your amazing, transfer coordinators or career counselors on campus. But a lot of times students, they just don't know yet, and they want a safe place to begin to explore. And then we ultimately want them to lead in to have those conversations with you. So when they do come in, you can have those really deep, meaningful conversations that you have with them. So Nectar allows you to be able to use assistance in the classroom as well as out of the classroom. So I want to hop into one and show you in the back end, in our next few minutes that we have left, just all the options that you have. And so you can see, when I was talking about before, that it's really grounded in what we all know is important to you. So just like any assistant, you can name it, you can create the avatar. Some get really creative in names, some just name it what it is. You can always have a, a description. Descriptions are important. It helps the students know what they're supposed to do. The next section of an assistant is knowledge. So think about knowledge as the brain of the assistant. Knowledge can come from three places. Knowledge can come from the information that you have. Those could be all sorts of things like PowerPoints and documents and videos and files, right? On some of your proprietary information, think about all the information that might be in your LMS. That's one place knowledge comes from. The second place knowledge comes from could be specific URLs. So you have the ability in Nectar to upload a particular website. So knowledge could come from a particular website that you give it, or knowledge could come from the entire internet. And kind of the third place knowledge comes from is the trained data sets of the LLM models. So lots of options when it comes to knowledge. Everyone always asks me, is there a limit to how much knowledge you can have? The answer to that's no. You just can't have a file over 150 megabytes per file. And so it's also very easy to get information out of your LMS. So you can actually export a file, the content out of your LMS, and quickly import it into Nectar using that. Or if you are a Canvas user, we actually have a Canvas API now that would sync your Canvas course with your Nectar assistant. And anytime you're updating information, it would sync back and forth. The next important thing on an assistant that you're creating is the prompt. So think of the prompt as how the assistant is supposed to behave, what it's supposed to do, what it's not supposed to do. Because if you looked at my examples, it never gave me the answer. So prompts have the things like, what is your academic integrity in there? Like, never solve it for them, never give them the answer. Ask them a few questions before to assess if they've actually read the Shakespeare that they were supposed to read. Look at what is that teaching method that that you have, or that you want it to follow. We actually help you at Nectar a lot with your prompts. We have an entire prompt library to get you started. These will get you about 90% of the way there, and then it's just a matter of tweaking those. Plus, we work with all of our schools one-on-one to be able to help you with that. So that prompting, I know that scares a lot of people, and you can, I'll be honest, I'm one of those. You can overthink it a little bit. But like I said, we have this entire prompt library to get you started. Plus, we'll always help you with that prompt based off of what you want to do. The next is some conversation starters. So those were those 4 bubbles that we saw just to help the students. Students need to be told it's okay to use my assistant. I want you to use the assistant. I created this assistant for you. They just need that nudge to know that it's okay and it's something that is safe for them to use. And then the last thing we think about is the advanced settings. And as I mentioned, you can see that you have a lot of control. You're controlling the knowledge. So you're controlling the knowledge of where it comes from. You're controlling the knowledge of which AI model you want to use. So you can see the AI models that we have in here. You have that option to choose if you preferred one over the other. You can decide if it can use the web or not use the web. You can always use specific URLs as a knowledge source, but you can choose that. And then you can choose if it has the ability to create quizzes. Most always leave that on because it's a great option for students. The other option you have to control is the knowledge scope. So what I had shared before real briefly is that knowledge comes from the knowledge you're putting in there, whether that's URLs or documents. You're choosing from the LLM model of your choice. And you can even restrict that down. So you can say, never use any knowledge of, only use what I'm telling you in documents only. Super restrictive, but great use case. Let's say internally for your team, you have a policy manual, your faculty policy manual or your instructor policy manual, and you have an assistant just to help faculty and staff with that. That one makes a lot of sense, right? Document only, that information isn't anywhere else. But most assistants tend to fall in this topic knowledge. So what you're saying is use always my materials that I put in, And then you may go to the LLM model, but I want you to stay on topic. And this is really important while using infrastructure like Nectar is better than just sending students out to ChatGPT or Claude, because your assistants are grounded in the way you're telling it to behave, what you want it to do, what you don't want it to do, and it's going to stay on topic. So if I'm, using my biology one and I say, hey, can you tell me which concerts are in the area? Or something like that, it'll like politely tell me, hey, we're supposed to be studying biology right now. It's going to stay on topic. It's not going to make something up and relate that to biology. And then you can go even more broad knowledge where it's always going to use your documents in that topic, but you're giving it permission to choose things adjacent. So if you were doing like role playing or something like that, or if we think about my Connections Explorer, we would want to keep those things kind of general. So this is probably one of the fastest demos I've ever given, but it's really just wanted to give you a taste of Nectar a little bit so you could see. We would love to be able to have more conversations with you if it's something that you want to learn more about. And so, I'd encourage you to check out our website I dropped it in the chat. I think it showed up in there at nectar.io. You can also sign up for like a 14-day free trial. If you happen to be at any of the California community colleges and are joining us today, you do have free access to Nectar through the chancellor's office. So, just reach out to us and we can provide that access for you. So, Mike, anything else you want me to kind of address or any questions that have come in?
No, I haven't seen any questions yet, but this is a good time. If anybody wants to post their questions in the chat, or in the comments there, we can go ahead and address them. What are some of your favorite uses, Jamie, that you've seen of Nectar? So maybe some out of the box kind of ideas that customers have done.
Yeah. There's a culinary professor who has an assistant that works with students to take their own initial recipes and make them healthier. I thought that was kind of an interesting use case.
Oh, wow.
So seeing it in a useful tool that way. There was an academic tutoring center that teaches their tutors a lot of different ways to work with students, but they created an assistant that helps them like if they get stuck with a student, and so it guides them through, like if I'm tutoring you, Mike, the assistant, if I went and said I've tried this method with Mike, I've tried this method and it's still not working, it kind of goes through all these different teaching methods and pedagogy and gives the tutor some additional ideas to try. And I was like, that is a great use case. Wow. Because they want their tutors to be successful, but it's easy to kind of you're like, oh, this is working as a teacher, or a tutor. And then if they get stuck, they have a tool that helps them get unstuck or try different things with the student. I think that's one of a unique use case. So that was kind of like a behind the scenes, one for staff. That was a unique one I saw as well. Yeah. And there's some really cool role-playing ones out there. There was a criminology professor who had like different role play of like crime scenes and stuff. So there's different cool stuff.
Totally.
Like that. But yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. Someone asked about, can you share some more details on the free access to Nectar? So if they go to the website, they'll be able to ask more questions or something.
Yep. If you go to the Nectar website, just down in the corner, there's that little bubble, click on that, and you can request, you'll see the information on the website for the sort of free trial of it. And you can, and just put your information in and go from there. So.
Very cool. Any other questions from our audience members? Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to break for lunch here in just a couple of minutes. I'll leave this open. So if you want to network, if you want to share in the comments your, details, you guys can connect, share your LinkedIn. That's always great. We're going to leave this session open till about 12:50. So you guys can hang out here in track one if you want. I'll put some music on and show the track 1 p.m. sessions. And I'll also post a link to Andy's session, which will be right after lunch, starting right at 1 o'clock. We're going to have a giveaway at that time. So make sure you're here for that. We're going to ask some questions. And I get to ask that question. So you may or may not want to go look at all the posters that are in the poster session. And I think I have a link for you for that. Let me see if I can find that here. Yes, here's the poster gallery link. Give me 1 second. Go check these out. Be prepared to find the answer to that question for our lunchtime giveaway right after or at the end of lunch. So, and that will be in the keynote. And here's the link for the keynote for Andy. I'm going to copy that. And thank you guys for joining us. Jamie, thank you for sharing Nectar with us. Man, what a powerful tool. It really is open to the imagination, what you can do with some of these tools. We have so many different ways that we're using AI in our courses at LAPU, and your tool has really helped us to be able to really help students learn more proactively and interactively, and so it's such a great thing. So thank you very much for presenting today.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.